Mrs. Morris and the Ghost. Chapter 5. Charlene grabbed a lightweight jacket because despite the blue sky, fall had arrived overnight in Salem and mid-70s daily temps had dropped to mid-60s. She walked the mile into town, breathing deep of the brisk air as she thought over her situation. Ghosts were real, and she'd spent the morning not only talking to one, but agreeing to share her home until he could move on. Jack was obviously distraught over his wife's infidelity, and digging up the past to uncover more dirt would likely cause him more pain. But what choice did she have? He was convinced that he'd been murdered. It had taken her less than 5 minutes online to discover Shauna's new married name and get a picture of her and her new husband, Theo. Both had benefited from his death, hadn't they? After all, with Jack gone, his wife had the estate, most likely an insurance policy to protect her from this kind of calamity, and a new husband to boot. The phone in her pocket started up with "Rolling in the Deep" by Adele, her mantra after Jared had died. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Her mother. She gritted her teeth, knowing if she didn't answer, she'd hear about it later. "Hi, Mom. You didn't answer me last night." A whining tone that Charlene knew all too well brought immediate guilt. "I thought I might hear from you, just to let your dad and I know that you made it to Salem safely." A heavy sigh followed, heaping on the guilt. Charlene was too old for this kind of treatment and decided it was beyond time for boundaries. "What's up, Mom?" "I texted you to let you know that I was busy and that I'd call later. I have a million things to do." "Honey, I'm sorry if I'm taking you away from your work, but I just can't imagine you prattling around in that old mansion, certainly not all by yourself. Now, if Jared were with you..." Charlene braced against the instant hurt. "That would be different. But alone? No, no, no. How terrifying with 3 floors of living space above you. And all the creaks and sounds an old house makes. It would give me the creeps, that's for sure." If only she knew. Creaks and sounds were nothing compared to Jack scaring the daylights out of her. No way would she ever tell her mother about that. "The place is beautiful, Mom. In better condition than I imagined. It's going to make a wonderful bed and breakfast. The grounds alone are worth every cent I paid." "It's going to be terribly hard work. Have you thought of that? You'll need to hire a complete staff and competent people, and that takes time and money, neither of which you have." Her mother's tone suggested that Charlene might not understand the enormity of what she'd bitten off. "I know you put everything into this ridiculous venture. It could take years to break even, let alone make a profit." "I went over it with my accountant and the banker. I gave them both my entire business plan, facts and figures. Hopefully, we'll turn a small profit the first year. If not, by the end of next. Some of the rooms are already completely furnished. So please don't phone me with your worries. I want to be happy, Mom, and I need your support in this, not your doom and gloom attitude." "Of course, dear. You know I only want the best for you. I worry. It's a mother's job to worry. Not that you'd know about that," she huffed, and Charlene bristled at the unkind words. Her mom always acted as if it was failing in Charlene's part that she couldn't have kids. "Mom, I need to go," she said between clenched teeth. One more insult, she might say things that would end their tentative peace. "I haven't gotten to the reason for the call." Her voice was plaintive. "Your dad and I would like to come visit you in a few weeks, before it gets too cold." "You're joking, right?" Charlene glared at her phone. "No. Why would I be joking? We could stay and help you set things up." She heard her father yell out, "I'm an excellent handyman, you know. I can do more than just hang some pictures. Besides, I went to see if your mother was any of those witch trials." "Oh, shush," her mother said to her dad, and Charlene had to laugh. "You two at it again," she quickly added. "Tell Dad I appreciate the offer, and yours too, Mom. I know you mean well. But give me a few months. Probably in spring when I'm settled and the place is ready and filled with guests." Less for her to criticize, for sure. "Gotta go. Love ya." She put the phone back in her pocket and hurried down the street. Dear heaven, imagine her folks walking in with her talking to Jack, her resident ghost. Seeing a florist shop called Witch's Bloom, Charlene entered and introduced herself to the salesgirl dressed in black behind the counter. She looked to be in her early 20s, with purple streaks in her hair, purple lipstick and nails, and a dozen rings on her long, slender fingers. "Is the manager in?" Charlene admired the attractive shop filled with fall arrangements and assorted plants in wicker baskets. "I'm going to be opening up a B&B next month, and I'd like to place an order for fresh flowers delivered weekly." "She just left for lunch. I'm Denise. I make most of the arrangements. We do several of the hotels around here. If you leave your card, I'll have Margaret call you when she gets back." "Excellent. I'm Charlene Morris. It was a pleasure meeting you. By the way, a gray Persian showed up on my doorstep this morning. Do you know of anyone missing a cat? He has a red collar but no tag." "No, but you might want to check with the grocery store. Sometimes people put up notices for lost pets on the bulletin board. Or the police get calls. The station is super close, just off Margin Street." Denise gave her directions and then wrote them down on the back of the Witch's Bloom card for good measure. "Great! I'll head there now." And maybe she could ask about Jack Strathmore while she was there. As she walked the few blocks to the police station, Charlene ran through her immediate plans. Flowers, check. Large arrangements in the foyer and living room, one smaller for the dining room table, smaller still for the guest bedrooms. Costly, but important. There were 3 of the bedrooms left to furnish, and she'd checked the local consignment shops. She wanted at least one of the suites to have a 4-poster canopied bed, dreamy and romantic. Then came the hired help. One good housekeeper, a man about the house to do the repairs and someone to touch up the paint outside, a cook to help her with breakfast, and perhaps an afternoon tea. She'd like to see her guests mingle after playing the tourist all day. She'd serve finger sandwiches and scones, small slices of cake topped off with champagne, wine, coffee, or tea. It was important to start the interview process as soon as possible. If she intended to get the business off the ground by Halloween, the busiest time of the year, if the rooms were fully booked that weekend, she'd be off to a very good start, despite her mother's concerns. Charlene spotted the American flag hanging outside a stately brick structure and quickened her pace toward the police headquarters. She wanted to get rid of the cat, yes, but getting rid of the ghost was priority number 1. How to find out about Jack Strathmore without sounding like she'd lost her mind? She marched up the steps, pushed her way through the door, and ran into a boulder of a man. Must have been 6 foot, with linebacker shoulders, a long brown mustache, and dark brown eyes that reminded her of Sam Elliott in his prime. When he spoke, he had the same deep, melodious voice. "Morning, ma'am." He took her by the shoulders and steadied her on her feet. "You got a fire you're running from?" She shook her head. "No, I... He gave her a slow smile that made her pulse race and her knees go weak. "Why don't you tell me what's troubling you, and we'll see if I can help." He steered her toward a room created with glass blocks and nodded to the wheeled office chair. She took the seat as he hitched his butt on the corner of the big oak desk and stretched his long, khaki-clad legs before him. "Officer, I shouldn't be taking up your time. I just came in to ask about a cat." "Detective Sam Holden. And your name is?" "Detective? Why, that was the first bit of luck she'd had since her arrival." She smiled. "Charlene Morris," she replied, taking in the scent of his subtle cologne. Was that sandalwood? Jared's favorite. "I just moved into town. I bought the old place on Crown Point Road, the one with the Widow's Walk." He didn't say anything, so she babbled. "It's been empty for some time. Heard a rumor that there was a ghost bothering the previous owners, and that's why no one, other than me, wanted to buy. Do you know anything about that?" She hadn't meant to ask the question directly, but there it was. The words had just slipped from her mouth. He laughed, his eyes kind. "You're in Salem, Miss Morris. If you don't have a ghost or two, nobody's interested. That's the way it is around here." He lowered his voice and said in a conspiratorial whisper, "We might have a rich history, but as an officer of the law, If I saw a ghost jaywalking, I'd ticket him on the spot." She released a breath and folded her hands together over her knee, acknowledging his laughter with a wry smile. "Well, that's a relief. I'd hate to open a bed and breakfast and have my guests chased off by a ghost." "Ah, so that's what you're doing with such a big place. Sounds like a solid investment to me. And Mr. Morris?" "There's no Mr. Morris, I'm sorry to say. He passed away 18 months ago." Charlene cleared her throat and held the man's gaze. "I needed a change." The handsome officer's eyes warmed with sympathy. "That's tough, ma'am. But Salem is a friendly town, and you're in the right business. I expect you'll have a house full of people soon, and be too busy to care about some old ghost rumor. You know how drafty old homes are. They have lots of noises, so don't let your imagination run wild." "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind." Charlene shifted on her chair, and the wheels creaked. "Before I leave, I do have a few more questions. According to the history of the property, a man named Jack Strathmore once lived in my home." The detective said nothing. If he knew more, the man wasn't giving anything away. Charlene spoke quickly to fill in the awkward gap. "He was married to Shauna, I don't know her maiden name, and it seems that she married Theo Rawlings rather quickly after Jack Strathmore's death. Jack was a doctor in his 40s who passed away suddenly. I wondered if by any chance his death was investigated? If there had been an autopsy?" Sam Holden's gaze chilled, but she pressed on for Jack's sake. "During my research, it struck me as odd." "I remember him," Sam conceded. He stood up, straightening the files on his desk. "I was surprised when I heard about his death, but it was never considered a homicide." "And the autopsy?" The detective smoothed one side of his glossy brown mustache. "He had a stroke. Do you have any evidence to the contrary?" "No, not at all," Charlene said, missing the previous warmth he'd regarded her with. "But I did think his death was strange. It also occurred to me that his wife must have benefited financially after his death, with the property, whatever. You see where I'm going? After losing my own husband, I couldn't imagine marrying again so fast." He took a seat opposite her, leaning the chair back. "There's no telling what happens behind the bedroom walls. Folks might act like the ideal couple in their social life and despise each other at home. I assure you, there are stranger cases than this." "Yes, I'm sure you're right." Charlene decided against bringing up another rumor and asked instead, "I was wondering if the police report is of public record, or the autopsy report?" The detective's expression turned suspicious. "What on earth for? Ma'am, I don't know what you've heard about your estate, but Dr. Strathmore died of natural causes. Autopsy reports are only available to next of kin, and they are only done under suspicious circumstances, which the doctor's stroke was not." "His next of kin would be his wife, yes?" Who had the most to gain? She got to her feet and grabbed her tote bag from the floor by her chair. Frustration and something resembling anger shot through her veins. Jack had been buried quickly, with no champion to question his death. With Jared, the hit-and-run accident had left no mystery. But if she'd come home from work and found him on the floor, she would have demanded answers to find the truth. "I think it's wrong," she said simply. "A man that young should have had an autopsy. I would have insisted on it." The medical examiner thought differently. "Yes," she clutched her tote tightly against her stomach. "I'm sorry I bothered you." "Are you all right?" The detective's tone held concern. "Would you like some water?" "No, fresh air will do me good." She stood tall and grappled with the barrage of unfamiliar feelings. Jack was not Jared. "You said you came in about a cat?" His deep tone struck a chord and her pulse skipped. "Oh, yes. A gray Persian with a red collar and no tag showed up this morning and has moved right in. I'm not a cat person, and I'd really like to find out who the owner is." "I'll ask around. May I stop by if I hear of anyone?" "Sure." She flashed him a shy smile and stepped toward the door. Bye now. Good luck with your new place. I can also recommend some nice restaurants in town. Give you a guided tour. Thank you so much. She sensed he was testing the waters for how she'd respond to a date. I'm sure that I'm going to be extremely busy for the next few months, and I'm not quite ready to do much socializing just yet. I see. He grinned slowly, white teeth beneath his full mustache, his rich voice making her very aware of her feminine side. Well, let me know when you are. Charlene quickly left the police station, rushing away from the strange feelings that Sam provoked. No way did she want a man's attention, as flattering as it might be. She still loved her husband with every cell in her body, and yearned for him every minute of the day. Sam wanted a woman, probably in his bed, and she had no desire to be that woman. After all, she had Jared's memories to keep her warm, and Jack, her handsome, mysterious ghost, for company. What more could a woman want?